I'm going to share first. So let me get that happening. All right. Share my screen.
I'm just going to say real quick, questions are welcome throughout. If you want to unmute or throw them in the chat, I'll monitor chat also.
You know, and even though I practiced this just before, I can't actually find how I'm supposed to change my sharing view. Oh, you know what? I have to do this first. That's why. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to do that. And can everyone see Energy Assistance Program? All right, perfect. All right. I'm Sandra Seaman. I'm with the Energy Assistance Program at the state office, and which is at the Minnesota Department of Commerce. And there's some contact information if in the future people want to get a hold of me. I'm going to this is the agenda of what I'm going to talk about today, all about the Energy Assistance Program. What is it? What does it do? Who do we help? How do we determine eligibility and benefits? How can people apply for energy assistance? Something about the application itself, and when can you apply and where to get more information. So what is the Energy Assistance Program? It's a federally funded, excuse me, a federally funded health and safety program. It's funded with federal LIHEAP funds, which is a federal program, low income home energy assistance program. And in Minnesota, it's called the Energy Assistance Program, or EAP. It's run by the Department of, I don't know why that thing is showing, but it's run by the Department of Commerce in Minnesota. In other states, it's maybe run by different agencies. And it's meant to ensure that eligible households have affordable, continuous, safe home energy. It's part of the financial safety net that helps people, especially those with fixed incomes, to help pay for heat and electricity. And this year, we also can pay for water. And especially seniors who are living on a fixed income, and costs of heat and energy, you know, continue to rise. So we want to be there to help out and, you know, fill that gap. We pay the money directly to the energy or water company on behalf of the household in most cases. And there's also additional money, which we call a crisis benefit, which will help households keep from getting disconnected, or if they are disconnected, to help them get reconnected. And this includes fuel deliveries for households with delivered fuels. So if they're low or have no fuel, they can get this additional benefit. And again, that also gets paid directly to the energy company. And then new this year, last year, excuse me, we got additional federal funding to be able to help households pay their wastewater bills. And it's for households who are disconnected, have a pending disconnection, or have a past due water bill. Again, we have to pay the water supplier in this case, but we can pay the entire balance, including fees, for a household. So that's kind of a nice benefit. We also, what do? We help homeowners get broken heating systems repaired or replaced. We can also help connect households to other helpful resources. And then basically we just want to help households prevent them from having to choose between having heat and other necessities like food and medicine and rent and that kind of thing. Who do we help? We help both renters and homeowners, including renters who pay for heat indirectly in, like, for example, in rent to a landlord. And we serve all eligible households, but we also try to outreach to target populations that are susceptible to high heat and cold. And that includes seniors and people with disabilities and young children. We helped 305,000 people last year in 128,000 households with an average income of about $2,100. Most were renters and most were households in greater Minnesota. And how we determine eligibility is we look at the past 3 months of household income. We're trying to assess a household's current situation. So if they had a job 4 months ago or 6 months ago and they no longer have the job, we want to make sure we know what their current situation is. We don't consider assets like the value of the home in considering eligibility. And it's households that are 50 at or below 50% of state median income that are eligible. And some examples are for a household of one, it'd be like household with income just over 30,000. Household of four is income just over, just under 59,000. And you can see on our website, we have on our Commerce website for each household size what the income maximum is. How do we determine benefits? Well, the initial benefit, which we call primary heat, it's dependent on the household size, income, and energy consumption, and that's a certain amount of money. It ranges from $200 to $1,400 for the household, with an average about $500. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there's this additional benefit that you could get if you are disconnected or pending disconnection or low on fuel, and you can get this additional money. But seniors can also get help with their current bill, a current or past due bill. So that's something that's nice for seniors to know about. They could ask their service provider for help with that. And as I mentioned earlier, homeowners can also get help with a broken furnace, so repair or replacement.
Are you all done?
How do you apply for energy assistance? Well, it's a statewide program. We have 28 local energy assistance providers throughout the state. On this website, on the Commerce website, you could look and find by your tribal government or county who will be your service provider. This is just, it's kind of hard to see the details on this, but give you an idea that some service providers serve multiple counties. There are a few counties themselves that are service providers. And as I said, tribal governments are some of our service providers throughout the state. Now, you guys are all up in the Northwestern region. So we have these service providers that are serving your area: Bi-County Community Action, Inter-County Community Action, Mahabi-Ottawa Community Action, Northwest Community Action, the Red Lake Band, Tri-Valley Opportunity Council, West Central Communities Action, and then White Earth. You can contact your local service provider to get an application, or you can go to this link and there's an application, a form you can fill out, with your name and address and submit, and then an application will be sent to you. So this is the website, what it looks like. For the Commerce website, local service providers may also have information about an application, but if you want to go here, that you can find some information. And then you want to return the application to your local service provider along with your income proof, because they are the ones who actually process the application and get the funds to you. And I will say we have an online app coming into fruition, and it's being kind of soft launched right now, and will be fully launched hopefully fairly shortly. So that will be a new option for folks to do it online, which would be great. The application that you complete makes you eligible for energy assistance, water assistance, as I mentioned, and then potentially for weatherization assistance services. And Emily Belt from Weatherization will be telling you all about that shortly. So I'm just going to give you a couple tidbits. The idea about weatherization is to help households save money on future energy bills by making your home energy efficient. Some of the things that they might do would be exterior wall and attic insulation, air leakage reduction, furnace, boiler, and water heater repair or replacement. And again, Emily will tell you more about that. When can households apply? Normally it's October 1st through May 31st. So the program year just started a couple weeks ago, or until funds run out, because occasionally we do run out before May 31st, but not typically, but that could happen. We serve the households on a first come, first serve basis. Although if you have an energy emergency, we will address that as quickly as possible. And then households that are served in 1 year are automatically sent an application, a partially pre-filled application for the following year, so to make application easier. And like I mentioned, we will be implementing an online application, so that will help some households to apply more efficiently. So where can you get more information? On the Commerce website at this link, we have a lot of general information like the maximum income guidelines and the list of service providers by county or tribe. So if you're working with a household and need to help them figure out which energy assistance provider is their local provider, you could use that link. And there's also an 800 number that you can call to get, and people put in their zip code and it tells them, oh, for that zip code, your energy assistance provider is such and such. So to help spread the word to your clients and communities, you could use these outreach materials. We have energy assistance and water assistant flyers in English and 3 other languages. And those are available at those links and on our website. And flyers kind of look like this, and you're welcome to use them in promoting the program and informing folks about this availability of the program. And that is all I have. Do we have any questions?
One question is, what do you consider your seniors for ages? Because obviously that's different.
Oh, excellent. Very good point. I should have that in here. It's 60 plus.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? We can unmute or throw them in the chat box. Not seeing any come through at this time. That was really great information. I did throw some of those links into the chat for people to be able to grab.
Thank you so much for doing
And if
that.
questions come up later for Sandra, still feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll address them. Okay, Emily, it is your turn.
Hi, everyone. Are you seeing the pretty version of my presentation or is it still in PowerPoint mode?
Still in PowerPoint.
Okay, let's try this again. There we go.
Yep.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Emily Belt, and I'm a colleague of Sandy's. I work in the Weatherization Assistance Program. We're housed together in the Energy Resources Program, and we work for the State Energy Office. So there's lots of levels of interaction here in Commerce to make sure that we're all doing what we can to ensure these programs are a little bit related and near each other as we're moving forward. As Sandy mentioned, the Weatherization program is kind of unique as it is both similar to the energy assistance in our mission of helping Minnesotans through tough times where they maybe are struggling to afford necessary upgrades to their homes. But our program focuses more on the side of energy efficiency of your dwelling unit. So our mission is that housing is the foundation for success. So we collaborate with individuals, communities, and partners to create, preserve, and finance affordable housing. Our biggest focus here is to create a one-time investment in a home. We go out to homes once folks have applied for energy assistance and been shown on that application to also be eligible for our program so they don't have to apply separately. We get a long list of those applicants and we send them out to the service providers that are working directly with clients. And over the years, folks get provided with an on-site energy audit where some folks will come out to your house, take a look at some of the things that maybe could be spaces for energy improvement, striving for an annual energy bill reduction. That's our main goal, is to not only help pay for the energy that folks are using, but then to help reduce the amount of overall energy. Nationally, for every dollar that's invested in this program, we see over $1.72 in direct energy benefits. So that's like actual savings of financial money in your pocket, and $2.7 in non-energy benefits. So those could be things like mold or moisture remediation for folks with asthma or lung breathing conditions. Obviously, some of those non-energy benefits are as important, if not more important, than the energy savings itself. So we have a bit of a cusp between the public health sector and also this energy efficiency sector and world. I just wanted to give you a bit of history about our program because I am very proud, having only been in this program for 6 or 7 months, just with the long history of weatherization assistance in Minnesota. Our program's been around for over 40 years, and we're one of the most bipartisanly supported programs in the state, which I just think is very cool. We started in the 1970s offering basic services like air sealing, caulking windows, covering windows, weather stripping doors, those kinds of more basic things that anyone can really do. And we encourage people and try to provide educational materials for folks who don't qualify just for the financial piece of our program. But over the years, that's expanded to replacing old refrigerators, like in the 2000s, excuse me. For folks who have been familiar with the garage refrigerator, you know, a lot of the time those refrigerators from the 1970s are actually so inefficient, and we have so many newer productive models that they're sucking a lot more energy than they're actually providing benefit for homeowners. So being able to replace some of those things has been really fundamental. And now, as we're moving ahead and looking forward to the future of our program, we're seeing all sorts of new opportunities to help folks by getting roof repairs, solar, expanded measures for health and safety, flexibility of braiding funding so that we can incorporate state funds, federal funds, and all these other things to really get a big bang for folks' free buck at the end of the day. So the program details, what is this, you know, what all can we do? How can we help you? The Department of US DOE, Department of Energy Weatherization funds allows and funds us to repair and replace furnaces, hot water heaters, fix problem ductwork, insulate ductwork, complete air sealing, like I had mentioned, replace lighting to get everyone up to date on modern technologies in lighting that save massive amounts of energy, replace or repair carbon monoxide that says carbon dioxide. I'm sorry, this is an old presentation, and smoke monitors in people's homes. So like I said, there's just lots of things that we can help homes with and get some serious energy saving improvements made on homes. And we try and do this in the least invasive way possible. This is a hard graphic for some folks to gather, but I think that it's a little bit important to understand some of the funnel down, trickle down effects of how these programs come to be, because we're also interrelated. Congress makes the decisions that they pass down to Department of Energy or Department of Health and Human Services. That's where Commerce EAP and Commerce Weatherization play in. So we're directly, you know, funded by the federal government. And then we help distribute those funds through our service providers across the state who work directly with folks in communities across the state to do this work. Those service providers either have contractors or crews of workers that they work with to send out to audit the home, to check for energy efficiency measures, do those sorts of things, and then actually implement the work if you've got asbestos in your house that needs to get taken out and we need to replace all of the batting in your ceiling. You know, there's lots of things that can go wrong with older homes, and older homes are incredibly complex. So that is the group of people are most interacting with. And then we've got that funneling all the way down to the participant or the client who's receiving these services. Again, this is a slide just to show some of the more like cost-effective small things that we can do as far as air sealing, fixing heating fuels, or updating people from coal, oil, and gas to really fuel oil to update some systems that, especially in greater Minnesota, are much more expensive energy technologies and cost a lot more to operate through the winter and are cold. This brings me to a general conversation. I just wanted to enlighten you all about energy burden. If you haven't heard this term before, it's a concept to help us focus on some equity-based purposes in our program. We're trying to make sure that the people who need these services the most are getting the services as best they can. So energy burden is calculated by taking our energy spending overall, dividing it by the household income that we're looking at, and then seeing like how much of your household income are you spending on energy. So I live in St. Paul, and for the average energy burden for low income households in my area, it's 7 to 9%. Not super low, but also not, and I mean, I would not like to spend 9% of my income on energy, I can tell you that. But when we look at certain areas of the state, we're seeing a vastly different story of 17 to 20% of a household income being spent on energy. And as I'm sure you're all sitting here looking and thinking about that number, that is a vastly disproportionate number. And we just are trying to lighten the load by creating more efficient homes and allowing people to spend their money on things that they really need, like improvements to their, their actual lives versus just spending money on their energy. But for the average American household or the average Minnesotan household, not particularly focusing on low income populations, energy costs are only 2%. So I think there's this disparity that our program inherently tries to address, and we're really trying to focus on some equity related concerns for like renters and people who are not traditionally seen as people who would receive these services. So the average weather, oh, go ahead, is there a question?
Yeah, real quick question. Why do some areas have a higher energy burden than others?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking. It depends on a lot of factors, but the biggest one that we see is the type of fuel being used. So a lot of populations in some of these northern areas are not on as cheap or efficient natural gas type systems as I am here in the cities, where I'm on, a very well-connected city grid. When people are funding those kind of older technologies and older fuel sources, not only do they just have more inconsistencies in cost, but then when we have a particularly cold year and we're living in a house that's not particularly air sealed, we're actually losing a ton of energy just by running those systems and not having a perfectly weatherized house. If your attic insulation is inferior or not enough, and you're already spending a lot more because you're operating your house on, say, wood, maybe you're just like a wood burning home and your wood burning stove is your primary source of heat. It might cost a lot more to do that long term. Wood's probably not the best example there because wood costs are not changing a ton, but for fuel oils, we're seeing a lot of discrepancy with propane and those kinds of different types of energy. Did that help?
I'm not seeing any follow-up.
Okay. So the average energy burden in Minnesota of weatherization clients, people who are receiving our services, are about 3 times that of non-eligible households. We prioritize homes with children, elderly, disabled individuals, or those with especially high energy burden and high energy expenses. Like that map showed, we're trying to kind of pinpoint specific areas and specific communities who might have been disadvantaged and living in situations where their costs are just significantly higher than the rest of the general public. And we're trying to make sure that that comes down and gets evened out a bit. About 2/3 of our participants live in greater Minnesota, which I think is a great thing to highlight for folks in the Twin Cities. I know we think we're the center of everything, but 2/3 of our program funds and efforts actually go to greater Minnesota. I just wanted to give you some basic numbers because I think this is very cool. Our program in 2020, I'm sorry, I have some of the updated numbers for 2021, but I'm still working on collecting data on this. But back in 2020, and these numbers are pretty consistent across the board for things that number of homes we serve. We serve about 1,300 to 2,000 homes every year. Switching from propane to natural gas is a big deal. We serve obviously 500 plus clients of homes with children, elderly, or disabled residents. And we see some of the wins that we've seen in our program are things like homes that might be deferred because they have an issue we can't solve or have program limitations about the cost that we can put into a home are being readdressed. We've found more funding sources to address some of those and go back and say, hey, actually, we did find $10,000 to replace your furnace, even though X, Y, and Z might have disqualified it originally from our program. So we've seen just a ton of increase in that. Some of the challenges of our program, the reality between energy assistance and weatherization is that weatherization assistance takes a lot more time. There's a lot more hands involved. We've got to have a lot more people. And in general, I think Department of Energy has a little bit more say in specific things that are in and out of bounds for what our program can do. So that said, even though we've been around for 40 years, we've only been able to serve about 9% of the eligible population in weatherization assistance over that course of time. So it feels sometimes like a small drop in the bucket compared to the 300,000+ homes and families that are being served of the energy assistance program. Major kudos to you, Sandy. That is an incredible number. So that's just some of the realities in our program. I would also like to highlight contractor and staffing and participant income as two challenges, because I know weatherization assistance is something many people would want and appreciate, whether or not they qualify for our program directly by the funding. We are broken up similar to energy assistance in the fact that we are served across the state by 23 service providers. I think there's links to this in the chat for more zoomed in images, but some of our program is run by contractor-based organizations where they have relationships with contractors and then take bids from them all. Several of them are more crew-based, and we have a couple that are actually unionized, which is pretty neat. All this to be said, there's a lot of different ways that our program kind of operates, so it's hard to boil it down to a simple 1, 2, 3, this is how it goes every time. The biggest thing for you as a consumer, if you were trying to seek these services, to work with the service provider that's helping in your area, get in touch with them, find out where you are on the wait list, those kinds of things. And what's next for our program? I mentioned this briefly, but we are leaning into some new offerings, which are very exciting, like lead remediation and asbestos removal. There was a period of time where attics were insulated with this thing called vermiculite, and vermiculite in our area has been found to have all come from this one mine in Montana that is now shut down and being cleaned up because it was found to be an asbestos site. That said, we had to get all these extra special funds to be able to do that type of work, and we're previously deferring homes saying, sorry, we can't help with the asbestos in your attic, but we just don't have the funds or the means or the time. And now we do. So that's been very, very helpful. We're also dipping into some roof repair so that we can put solar directly on systems and homes that maybe would have qualified, but their roof was a little dinged up and didn't make sense to put solar on a house until their roof was tidied up and the client couldn't afford to do that themselves. I also just wanted to highlight a couple of major laws that are coming down the pipeline to give you a little hope and to give me some inspiration. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or IIJA, if you've heard of that at all in the news. It's been something we've been talking about internally a lot. It's going to give us 5 years of stable funds for our program, and it's going to nearly double the potential of homes that we get to serve year to year. That's giving me a lot of fun challenges with workforce development and how we work with the unions and trades to ramp up our workforce to be able to serve people faster. And that's very exciting. But we also expect to be able to serve a lot more kind of challenging, traditionally challenging areas for people who like live in a rental unit and pay their own utilities. How do we serve them better? How do we upgrade, big apartment units with 20 to 30 residents who all might qualify for this program? The Inflation Reduction Act, that one just came out really recently, like 3 months ago, maybe. So if you haven't heard about it, you're not that behind. I expect the turn of 2023 to just be kind of inundated with lots of rebates related to this. And I wanted to raise that to your ear as well. There are going to be rebates for things like solar, weatherization services for people who maybe didn't qualify for this program, but want to do their own type of work or have someone come in and air seal their home, as well as rebates for electric vehicles and things like that. So there's a lot of potential here, even if you don't immediately or indefinitely qualify for this program. There's like lots of other ways that weatherization might affect you. Happy to take any questions you have. I know that was a quick blitz, but it was great to share some space and time with you all. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat right now. So Anne, I will let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks, everybody. My name is Ann Hefkin. I do not work for the state. Unlike Sandra and Emily, I work for Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota. We are the nonprofit law firm that serves Northwest Minnesota. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do as I figure out. And then I'm going to move into the cold weather rule. And I'll tell you right now, this is going to be a light and breezy presentation. I am not going to take 20 minutes at all. And I'm going to have a couple of themes. Number one is when you're talking, whether you're a consumer or talking to consumers, have them apply for energy assistance. It is going to be a cold, nasty winter and prices are going to be through the roof. And I know that that's already been mentioned, but it's making me nervous for our low-income clients and our seniors that we serve. So you're going to hear about 3 themes from me over and over and again. So get ready. So what is Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota? We do free legal help for low income and seniors in Northwest Minnesota. And we really focus on critical basic needs. There's no right to an attorney in these types of cases, but we try and fill the gap and the access to legal help, to have barriers to family issues like family stability and avoiding violence, so domestic violence cases, maintaining housing, and anything related to economic stability. And so the reason that I'm here, or that I fit into this presentation, is that we get calls from our clients starting October 1st. Really, we get calls on a lot of things related to heat, and my landlord turned off my heat. My landlord won't turn on my heat, or I didn't pay my heat bill and it was turned off. So that's how I am kind of related to these issues. And I'm going to get into what we do in a second here. We do full representation. We are a nonprofit law firm. So just like you see on TV, we go into court with people, though a lot of it's Zoom, and provide full representation in some cases. Unfortunately, we're not able to fully serve everyone who calls and applies and has a civil legal aid issue, a non-criminal legal issue, but we do the best we can, whether with representation, giving people advice, sometimes making a call on their behalf, or just providing education or self-help to them to work through their legal barriers to success. So the big thing I want to share, and I want you to share as far and wide as possible, is that the cold weather rule does not mean heat can't be turned off. We get calls every year that people, they cite to me the cold weather rule. They say, well, I can't get my heat turned off. There's the cold weather rule. They also use it to mean I can't get evicted. It's winter. It's a cold weather rule. That is not what the cold weather rule is. It's one of those myths that is out there persistently and gets people into trouble, right? Because they don't use the cold weather rule, which we'll talk about in a minute here, to its benefit. They cite it as a way that their heat can't be turned off. They can't be evicted. So things can't happen because of the cold weather rule, which it's not even close to what the cold weather rule is. So what it does do, it helps people protect service from being disconnected, or it helps being reconnected. Okay, that's what it is. It's help, basically. It's so it should be renamed, frankly. It should be renamed like a payment plan rule, which is not very clever at all and not as pithy, but it would be more accurately describe what the cold weather rule is. So really basics, it's a payment plan. It says if you have natural gas or electricity, you can, between October 1 and April 30th, contact the company that provides that utility and make a reasonable payment plan. As long as you make that payment plan and you keep that payment plan, they can't turn off your electricity. Okay, it's really fairly simple. There's lots of nuances on the side, and I probably won't get into too much of it. But I really appreciated what we just learned about energy assistance and weatherization, because we will have people who have propane, especially, it seems like, and I think some people maybe use wood fuel oil, but propane is a biggie, where people's propane tanks are empty and they, first of all, they call and say cold weather rule, someone has to fill it up. Again, not what the cold weather rule is, or they wait till it's empty and then they have extra fees to fill up their propane. So if you have clients that are dealing with propane, dealing with ahead of time is really big, because the cold weather rule does not going to apply to the companies that provide propane. So again, it's sort of a season. There's kind of this, unfortunately, our winter season is extremely long. Our cold weather season, apparently, according to this rule, begins October 1st. And by the way, I was up north of Bemidji yesterday and there was some snow in the ditches. So it's begun, you guys. And it goes till April 30th, which is extra fun. So contacting your energy company and making and keeping a payment plan. So this requires some planning ahead. And that's why I'm glad we're out here having this conversation today. And I'm hoping that all of you can talk to everybody you know who might qualify for energy assistance, to go apply for energy assistance. But even if you don't qualify for any benefits, you can now make a budget for yourself by applying the cold weather rule and calling your energy company and saying, can I get a payment plan for the next 6 months? Because we all know what's going to happen, right? Your September bill is say $200, your October bill is $300. All of a sudden there'll be a cold snap and it'll jump up to $550. And I think that what Emily showed about the energy burden, right? Energy burden is not consistent throughout the year. The cold weather rule and making a payment plan helps people budget it throughout the year. It is not the same in September as it is in January and February. And I mean, we all have pretty consistent incomes. Most people, I don't make more money in January or February than I made this month. And our low income clients, that's true as well. And so when you go from a $200 bill to a $400 bill, it's really hard, which is why energy assistance, weatherization, and implementing a payment plan are just super important. So if you receive energy assistance, you might pre-qualify. But again, energy assistance isn't the payment plan. It's just assistance. It's extra money to help you pay that bill, as Sandra talked about. So a few details, you can start at any time in the season. We didn't have to start at October 1. If you suddenly realize in December that you should do it, absolutely. One thing to note, that for renters, the utilities have to be in your name. So when you rent, there's two ways that your lease could say. Your lease might say landlord pays utilities, and the lease might say tenant pays utilities. If tenant pays utilities, it's your responsibility as a tenant, as a renter, then this cold weather rule payment plan will apply. If your landlord is responsible and your heat gets turned off, there is a very different legal remedy and absolutely call legal services. They can't do that, but you got to get your landlord to pay the bill. And there's a whole tenant remedies action through the courts that's expedited that. We do about 10 of those a year too, where someone's landlord is responsible for the heat bill, doesn't pay it because either they can't pay it, they forgot to pay it, they goofed up, or they're trying to kick the tenant out. Let's be honest. Sometimes it's an illegal eviction. They're like, hey, you didn't pay your rent. I'm going to turn your heat off in January. You and your kids will definitely leave then. That's a misdemeanor. And actually you can't do that. But anyway, that's if the utilities are in landlord's name. So if utilities are in the name of a renter, they should make that payment plan. I always tell people, make sure it's reasonable. It's got to be something you can afford. Don't make something you can't afford. And look for those resources before the bill is due. One, if you don't have a payment plan or you miss a payment plan, you don't have your energy assistance, you haven't gotten emergency assistance, you haven't applied for everything, and that bill gets, and your heat gets turned off, getting it back on adds extra costs, right? And so that's something we try and get people to avoid. But again, if it is shut off, you can make a payment plan and make reasonable efforts to restore within 24 hours, because we know heat being off is critical and really dangerous, frankly, in the neck of the woods that we all live in. So I'm going to just say this again, because if you don't pay the bill, your heat can be shut off. The cold weather rule just simply says you have the ability, and there's an obligation for the utility companies to make a payment plan with you. And so I think that's all I have, you guys. I really whipped through that. I told you I'd be fast. So if there are any questions now, happy to take them. I'm sure Sandra and Emily would as well. It's always hard when I can't see faces, and I understand why everyone turns the cameras off, because they don't want to stare at themselves as much as I don't want to stare at myself.
You're right on that one, right?
Like, I get it, but I'm also like, it's hard to tell. I'm talking to myself, staring at myself talking. So.
I did put 2 links in the chat from the Minnesota government website for the cold weather rules. So just so you know, and then there's a flyer, PDF flyer that people can also have that talks through what Anne had talked through about doesn't stop you from being shut off. So.
Again, this is not a highly complex legal topic, but I really think it's important. And frankly, right after we get off this webinar, I'm going to remind my staff, talk to every single person you're dealing with about their plans for paying their heat, about applying for energy assistance, weatherization, if that's applicable. The other thing I will throw out there for low-income clients, one great thing about energy assistance, the income guidelines are a little higher than some other programs. Some people who don't qualify for other things and aren't used to applying for benefits qualify for energy assistance, and it provides a protection from garnishment, which is just a random side note, that if someone gets sued on a bill and the collection agency is going to collect on it, sometimes we say to people, have you applied for energy assistance? They say, oh, I don't qualify for any public benefits. Go apply for energy assistance because you probably do, and it can protect people from garnishment, is my little side note about, I just love these programs so much. So, and I live in an old house, so everything you guys said about old houses and weatherization rings very, unfortunately, a little too true.
I have a question, Anne. Can you provide an example of when your services might be, like when someone would contact their utility or need to contact you to be like, hey, I need a little extra support here? Is that something that happens fairly often, or where you would need to get involved as legal services? Or can you tell me a bit more about how that position?
Do you mean if they are being refused a payment plan?
Perhaps, or if
Yeah.
there's any other needs where people
Sure.
would then go, I just don't know where to go from here. I'm working with my utility and it's not going the way I
Yeah.
thought it would. Or
sometimes it's the situation where there's not a big legal action to be taken, but maybe not surprisingly, but as becomes as surprising to me often, sometimes having a lawyer pick up the phone or cite to a statute or make it sound kind of more official gives people power, and we're happy to step in to equalize and let people get that payment plan. So for example, sometimes we'll just say, point someone to what the rule is and say, you know, let your utility provider know this rule, or write a letter signed by a lawyer, or pick up the phone and say, hey, utility company, this does apply to you. And sometimes that's helps because sometimes people don't feel like they have the power to do it. It's a very unequal balance between someone who's paying the bill and the utility provider. So we're happy to help sort of extra add that, or just provide someone with the guidance on what their legal rights are and what they can do. We are happy to do that as well. You know, unfortunately, we can't go into court on every single case, so this wouldn't be a go into court case anyway. But that's what heat is just so important. Heat and utilities and water and really critical basic needs are really our focus, right? Safe, stable housing is number one. Housing first is really a mantra here. We do a lot of eviction prevention work or mitigation of harm of evictions, but I think related to that is making sure the houses people or homes or apartments that people are in are safe, and safety includes having heat and water. Seems pretty basic. I don't know who's in the audience, but those of you who work in poverty, people in poverty, you have seen the conditions of their homes. And I think people who don't work with people in poverty don't really are shocked by what sometimes the conditions people are living in. Whenever it gets extremely cold, I especially think of our clients that are in maybe mobile homes without adequate insulation or weatherization, because it's a cold place up. And I see the Lake of the Woods map and I think of folks up there. Did that answer the question, Emily? I was a little rambly. Okay. I would just say, I always like have people apply, you know, again, we can give them their legal rights. The way we run our services, we're up to 200% of federal poverty. We didn't talk about eligibility for legal services, but everybody who is under 200% of federal poverty, and seniors, we have a little bit of wiggle room with, so don't worry about that for seniors. They will talk to an attorney. We have like an advocate of the day. Someone will talk to them right away. Most of the time, so it's not like we call you back in 2 weeks or whatever. And we also try and triage and figure out what's the most emergent issues of the day based on the calls that we take that day. And we basically overlap with Land of the Dancing Sky plus Wadena County. Real close to overlapping completely, but we're not.
Do you want to talk about your special rule that you have for seniors, just in case somebody has someone that calls in? I know it's not a huge thing, but it is a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so generally when someone calls to qualify for legal services, most of our funders say 200% of federal poverty adjusted. So we'll ask some waiver questions about expenses. But through our Title III funding, we will ask those questions. But if someone is a senior, we basically give them a waiver for an initial consultation. We do give higher levels of service for those most in need. So the level of service we would give to someone who's facing like a danger issue. For example, order for protection, we're going to assist with that regardless of income. If it's an eviction, if it is unlawful discharge from a nursing home, something along that, that's really senior related. To be perfectly honest, if it's a senior who's calling for probate planning to deal with their home and their second lake home, we're probably not going to, we maybe give some advice, which will be you need to talk to a probate attorney. We don't do probate, so we're not going to jump too far into that. But any of the issues that we're talking about today, weatherization, or heat, water, housing, we're going to want to make sure that we step in on those cases regardless of income level for seniors, which is 60 and over.
Awesome. Thank you for talking through that. I think it's just this little hidden gem.
It is, and I will tell you, I will say that it's that sometimes intake staff, if you're not paying attention, you might not notice, they're doing 20 of these a day. They might not notice someone is 60 or 61, because to be honest, that's a pretty darn young senior. If someone calls and they're 85, they immediately think about senior funding. If someone is a younger senior, but they can always say, hey, can you look into that? Right. There's always a right to appeal. And I always go, oh yeah, don't forget senior funding. So if you are dealing with someone who calls and they said, oh, they're over income, we'll take a look at that issue. I will also say, though, I've had seniors, oh, so sweet, who one time this woman, she had $100,000 in her checking account, like just cash. And we're like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do any more services there. And, you have 100,000. She goes, well, I don't want to spend it on a lawyer. I was like, fair. I don't either. So
That's funny.
I was like, good for you for saving all that money, but
now you got to spend some of it too, right?
yeah. That's why she had so much money, right? She didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. Sandra and Emily, do you guys have anything else? I'm not seeing any other questions rolling into the chat, but I'm enjoying this dialogue. So
I just encourage
just
anyone.
want to highlight. Oh, sorry, Sand.
We're all like,
You
I'm
go first.
Okay. I just wanted to say to again encourage folks out there that are listening to reach out if you have questions. I'd be happy to help in any way. Would it be helpful if I provide that this PowerPoint to you, Stephanie?
I was going to ask that if you guys want to give me your PowerPoints, I will send them out in an email along with all of the links that are in the chat to the people that are registered for this.
Happy to do so.
Perfect. Emily?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the link I put in the chat is kind of a cool one. We worked with a great animator a while back to put together a client education series about weatherization assistance, how our program works kind of from start to finish, where you get to see some of what, like if the word audit scares you the way it scares me, the way they show some of what that looks like when a person comes into your home to test the energy efficiency of your home and figure out ways that they can make improvements on that. We also have that in Somali, Hmong, a visually impaired version, and Spanish, and a couple others I want to say. So it's a really good resource if you're working with clients who don't have English as a first language and are looking for more information about our program. There's also an English option too. So it's just been a great resource we're trying to use more to help educate people about what we do and how it works. Looking forward to any further conversations that might come out of this. Feel free to reach out to me if you have personal questions, and thank you for letting me share the space with you all today.
Awesome, thank you. Real quick, this YouTube page, as I do a lot with providers, can we share this on like our Facebook page, and can I share it to my list? Awesome. So everyone else who's a provider and wants to share this, It's great. There's a lot of episodes. They're not very long. Cool. All right, well, I will give everybody back about 7 minutes of their time. This recording will be put on our website, hopefully by middle of next week. So I will send out those emails also, as well as the recording. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of us.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody
you.
else. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.